How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samach Aleph, Daf 61 of Masechta Sanhedrin, friends. These dafs they're not going to be the easiest dafs, I'll tell you that. Is somebody calling me? I don't know. These aren't going to be the easiest dafs, but alright, talks about Avodah Zarah and stuff. So here we go. We're going to start on Daf Samach Amud Beis, about 5 or so lines from the bottom. Omer Mar. So we said yesterday, Ayisi Omer b'zoveach kodshim b'chutz akosim v'dav. Right, that if so the pasuk of zoveach leloim yochoram. So we said that's talking about a chiyuv misa for slaughtering an animal for avodah zarah. Now, the Gemara had said if it wouldn't have said lelohim, if it just said zoveach yochoram, I would have thought that it's talking about shchutei chutz. If you slaughter an animal outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Now, in fact, the Gemara, right? So we said that zoveach yochoram would be referring to shchutei chutz, but zoveach kodshim b'chutz karisu. We already have a pasuk that tells us what the ramifications are for shchutei chutz. The answer is the ramification is karis. So why would I have thought that the ramification is skila? So Sagadate Chamina, I may have thought to say ki asu beik tala, ki lo asu beik karis. Well, I may have had the havamina to say that, well, if you warn the guy, well then he'll be chayiv skila. He'll be chayiv misa. If you don't warn the guy, then he'll be chayiv karis. So karis is only if there's no warning. Kamash malon, that we're saying, yeah, but that's talking about avodah zarah. It's not talking about shchutei chutz. Omerlei Rav by Rav Chanan Abai says Rav by Rav Chanan to Abai Ema. I will suggest the following. Yotzo ishtachavoyo lilamid ala klal kulo. That when we single out prostrating when it comes to avodah zarah, I will say that it's to teach us about all sorts of ways to be oved avodah zarah derech koved, when it is an honorable way. For example, prostrating, or kissing or hugging or putting shoes on or slaughtering. So Ema, I'll say Yotzo Ishtachavoyo, that when we single out prostrating, it's the Lamed al Klal Kuloi, it's to teach about the entire category of ways to be Oved Avodah Zarah in an honorable way. V'chitema, and if you're going to say Zoveach Lomali, and if you're going to say, well then, why do I need Zoveach to be singled out? Because if we have Ishtachavoyo, okay, and that's representing all of the respectful ways to be Oved Avodah Zarah, that includes slaughtering. So then why do I need slaughtering to be singled out? Legufe, to teach me de mechashvin me'aveda la'aveda, that if you slaughter an animal, that we sort of can extend a machshava from one avodah to another. What does that mean? So, for example, if I slaughter an animal regularly, okay, I'm slaughtering, a sheep or something, and I'm just slaughtering the sheep to eat it, but with the intention that then I'm going to do zrikas adam, I'm going to throw its blood for avodah zarah. So, the activity that I'm doing now, I'm just doing for myself. The shechita is just for myself. But you have in mind that you're going to do zrikas adam for a getchke, for avodah zarah. So let's say that, okay, so we'll say that Hashtachavoy is to teach us about the whole category of derech kavod. Why is zoveach singled out? Zoveach is to teach me another halacha, which is the mechash avodah, that I can be doing this avodah of zvicha and have in mind for myself, but at the same time, to eat the animal myself, but at the same time have in mind that the zvichas adam is going to be for avodah zarah, and to say that that's going to be a problem. Right, that would fall under the category of Zoveach Lelim Yochoram. The Idmar, because it was stated, Hashoichid Behemo, that if somebody slaughters an animal, Lizok Dam Lavodas Kechavim. So you're slaughtering the animal for yourself, but you have in mind that you're going to do Zrikas Adam for Avodah Zarah. and to burn its fats for avodah zarah. So Rabbi Yochanan Omer asura, v'Reish Lakish Omer muteres. So Rabbi Yochanan says that's a problem. It's osur. The reason why it is osur, the reason why it's osur is because we learned this out from pigul, right? Pigul, for example, if you slaughter an animal, right, with the thought that you're going to eat it outside of its proper time, so then that's pigul. And just like you can slaughter an animal with the machshava, to eat it outside of its proper time, or to do zrikas adam or whatever outside of its time. So, one second. Okay. Right, as the last line of the first Rashi says, right? For example, if somebody slaughters an animal with the intention to do zrikas adam the next day, right, when it's not okay. So we said just like there it's problematic. So we say the same thing as here is problematic over here. By zrikas, by the animal, if you slaughter the animal, under the condition to do zrikas adam for avodah zarah, fine. Whereas Reish Lakish says mutaris, Reish Lakish says mutar. So now, right, so we see that is a sugya, that's a sugya of slaughtering an animal with the intention of doing zrikas adam for avodah zarah. So now, and we want to say that, so therefore we're suggesting that maybe what Zoveach Le'ochoram is coming to teach is that it's forbidden to slaughter an animal with the intention to do zrikas adam for avodah zarah. Now, so I understand the way that we learned it yesterday, right? I mean, because we had yesterday we had explained how we learned it, which is that it's zvicha, which is to teach us about the category of avodas pnim, that mizabeach, mekater, menasech are universal ways to be oved avodah zarah that you're always going to be chayav for, and ishtachavoya is just coming to teach about itself, to add it to the list, as opposed to what we suggested just now, that hishtachavoya is actually coming to teach about all derech kavod things, would be considered universal, and zvichas to teach us about mechashva me'avoda la'avoda. So says the Gemara, Hanichel Rabbi Yochanan, I understand why we learn it the first way, the way that we learned it yesterday, that zvicha is coming to teach that mizabeach, mekater, menasech are universal halachis. So Hanichel Rabbi Yochanan, so I understand according to Rabbi Yochanan, because we don't need zvicha to teach shemechashva me'avoda la'avoda, because he learns it out from pigul, apparently Masechta Zvachim or something. In Chul, Masechta Chulin, because he learns it out from pigul, so I don't need the pasuk to teach me shemechashva me'avoda la'avoda, and therefore zvicha is teaching that mezabeach, mekater, menasech are these universal avodas when it comes to avodah zarah. But Reish Lakish ba'ikra, but why don't we say according to Reish Lakish that actually it's the way that Rava by Rav Chanan is suggesting, and that maybe Zoveach Le'elohim Yocharam is taka teaching that mechashva me'avoda la'avoda. So the Reish Lakish ba'ikra ma'askif lo Rav Papa. Rav Papa asked the kasha to Rabbi Yochanan loy ba'ikra, but wait, according to Rabbi Yochanan, though, I could also argue that you need Zoveach Le'elohim Yocharam to teach me about mechashva me'avoda la'avoda, because adkan lo ka'osu Rabbi Yochanan le'behema, when Rabbi Yochanan says that just like by pigul, if you slaughter an animal with the machshava to do zrikas adam tomorrow, the animal is osur. So also when you slaughter an animal with the intention to do zrikas adam for avodah zarah, also the animal is osur. Haval gavra lo ba'ktolahu, but I don't know, right? But as far as the person is concerned, what is he liable for? I don't have any indication that he is chayiv misa. And therefore Zoveach Le'elohim Yocharam is coming to teach that he also is chayiv misa, that not just the animal is osur, but he is chayiv misa. So if I can argue that according to Rabbi Yochanan as well, maybe it should be like Rav Bar Rav Chanan suggests, and that Zoveach Leluim Yochorams, to teach that there's a chiyuv misa when you slaughter an animal with the intention to do Zrikas Adam for Avodah Zarah. So Maskif Ravacha B'Rei Ravika. Ravacha B'Rei Ravika asks Rish Lakish Mi Ba Yikra. Now, does Rish Lakish really require that pasuk to teach about Mechashvin Me'avoda La'avoda? Adkan Lo Kashari Rish Lakish Ela Behema. Right, you can make a similar argument that when Rish Lakish says that the animal is mutter, that's specifically the animal. Aval Gaver Baktolu. But I might think that the person himself is chayiv misa if you're mechashiv la'avoda. Midadavamishtach v'lahar. Just like when it comes to bowing down to a mountain, if you bow down to a mountain is avodah zarah mutter, v'ovda lahar, the har mutter, that the mountain is mutter, v'ovda b'sayif, but the person who bows down to the mountain is chayiv misa with a sword. So even when Rish Lakish says that that the animal is mutter, that if you slaughter an animal with the intention of doing Zrikas Adam for Avodah Zarah, the animal is mutter, but maybe he says that the person would actually be Chayiv Misa, and you don't actually need the pasuk to teach me that. So, okay, I guess it's not like super clear there necessarily. Okay. That which Rav Bar Rav Chanan suggests to Abaye, that Rav Bar Rav Chanan suggests to Abaye that maybe the pasuk about Ishtachavoya, what does it say? It says, Vayavod Elohim Achim Vayishtachu Elohim. So Rav Bar Rav Chanan suggested that maybe Hishtachavoya, bowing down, is representing the whole category of avodas that are derech kavod, including kissing, hugging, putting shoes on, slaughtering, all that stuff. And to teach that those are all universal avodas for avodah zarah, and that you'd be chayiv for them, no matter what, no matter whether it's darka or shloka darka. But if that's the case, that when the pasuk says, what does the pasuk say? They'll say, how do they serve their getchkes? Because I want to do it the same way. Meaning, from that pasuk we learned that there's a concept of kedarka, that avodah zarahs have to be worshipped in the way that they are meant to be worshipped, and if they are worshipped in different ways, well then you're not chayiv misa for that. But if we say that ishtachavoya represents the whole category of avodas that are honorable, including kissing, hugging, putting shoes on, sweeping, all those things, that all of them are universal avodas, well, what would be then an example of something that you would not be chayiv misa for? So, if you're going to say that, well, it's coming to exclude that if somebody defecates and therefore humiliates himself for an avodah zarah, so if you have an avodah zarah that you're supposed to slaughter for it, which is derech kavod, but you do it derech bizayin, so we're going to say that is potter, because you're not mechayiv misa because it's derech bizayin that you defecated therein. But that would already be learnt out from the fact that ishtachavoya, i.e. derech kavod, is a universal thing that you'd be chayiv for. Not right. Mahishtachavoy derech kibud, havkol derech kibud. That dafka, anything that's derech kavod, you would be chayiv misa for. But if it's derech bizoyin, so then you would be potter memela. So I don't need eicha yavdu. So well, rather it's teaching about if you defecate but for markulis. If you go to a different avodah zarah, one that is already derech bizayin, but for example, markulis, the bizayin is that you throw a rock at it, and instead he pulls down his pants and he defecates therein. So that's a different kind of humiliation. Derech bizayin and therefore you're going to be chayiv for that because it's the wrong kind of bizoyin. You're supposed to throw a rock at it. I may have thought, I may have thought, well, since Markulis is bizoyin, and I did a bizoyin by defecating, so I've called bizoyin, all bizoyins would be included, Kamash Malon. So Eicha Yavdu is come to say that since you did it in the wrong way, of the wrong humiliating way, therefore you would not be chayiv misa. El Hodam Rabbi Elazar, that which Rabbi Elazar says, Minayin dezoveach behema lemarkulis shehu chayiv. I gotta rub my eye, 1 second. Okay, that which Rabbi Elazar says, I lost my place now. Okay, how do you know that if you slaughter an animal for markulis that you're chayiv? Interesting. I mean, I thought that zvicha was just kind of a universal avoda. Shenemar v'lo yizbechu od ez zivcheim lasirim, that they won't slaughter their sacrifices for the seirim, I don't know, bad stuff. Imenu inyan lichidarka. And if it's not talking about kedarka, because we already learned that out from Eicha Yavdu, that if you're doing a kedarka, of course you're going to be chayiv. So Taneu Inyan, the shalo kedarka. So then say that it's talking about shalo kedarka, that if you slaughter an animal for markulis, shalo kedarka, you're chayiv, and that is learned out from v'lo yizbechu od ez zivcheim. But shalo kedarka mishtachavoy nafka. But I thought that we already learned out shelo kedarka from mishtachavoy, that keilu, that there are universal avodas that you're chayiv for, even in all contexts, and therefore zoveach you would be chayiv for anyways. Zoveach lehachis. Well, what if you are not being zoveach to markulis derech kovid, but rather you're being zoveach lehachis, right, just to anger, maybe to anger God, but not derech kovid per se? Well, then you would still be chayiv, because v'lo yizbechu od ez zivcheim lasirim, do not slaughter your animals for, I don't know, these I guess avodah zaros. Rav Amnuna irkisulei Torah. So Rav Amnuna lost some oxen, and he was going to search for them. Pagabe Rabba, and Rabba bumped into Rav Amnuna, Rama lemas nisin adode, and Rabba asked the following question to Rav Amnuna. Tanan, on the one hand, our Mishnah says, ha'oved avodas koichovim, somebody who serves avodah zarah, that he dafka has to go and serve the avodah zarah. Oved in omer lo, so he's only chayiv if he serves it, but if he says, I'm going to go and serve avodah zarah, that's not enough. You actually have to serve the getchke. But we have another Mishnah, and daf samach zayin, ha'omer evod, if a person says, I will worship, Eilech ve'evod, I will go and I will worship, Neilech v'navod, let us go and let us worship. In all of those cases, you're going to be chayiv. So saying seems to be enough. You don't actually have to serve. Omar lei, so Rav Amnuna responds, Be'omer eini mikabloi olai ela ba'avoda. Rav Amnuna responds that our Mishnah, when it says that you're chayiv only if you davka serve it, but saying is not enough, it's when he says that I'm only accepting it upon myself as avodah zarah when I serve it, not before then. So then he would davka have to serve it in order to be chayiv, but otherwise saying would be enough if he's not explicit about serving it. Rav Yosef Omar Tanoi Shokat Me'almo. Rav Yosef says, hold your horses 1 second. It's taka machlokes Tanoi. Tanoi hi detanya. HaOmer boyu va'avaduni. If a person declares that he himself is a getchke and he's recruiting people to serve him. Okay, I'm sure it's a very good business. Maybe a subscription model. Right, I'm the best avodah zarah you've ever heard of. Pay me $1,000 every month, and your life will be good. And he starts recruiting customers. So, Omer boy va'avaduni, a person says, come, worship me, I'm the best avodah zarah. Reb Meir Mechayev So Reb Meir says that just for saying this, he is already chayiv as a mesis. Rabbi Yehuda poter, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says that he is patur. He's not chayiv for saying this. So let's say, so if the customers then went and worshipped him as the best avodah zarah there ever was, so of course he's going to be chayiv as a mesis. Tichsiv, as the pasuk says, leisais l'cho pesel. Do not make the taiches. Do not make yourself into a avodah zarah, into a getchke. So if they mamish go and serve him, of course he's going to be chayiv for that. So ki pligi b'dibur ba'alma. But the machloikes between Reb Meir who says chayiv and Reb Yehuda who says potter is regarding when he simply says it, but nobody actually served him. Reb Meir sover dibur milsei. Reb Meir says that speech alone is important, and therefore he's chayiv. Reb Yehuda sover dibur lav milsei, and Reb Yehuda says that speech alone is unimportant, and therefore he's potter. So therefore, our Mishnah that says you only chayiv when you serve the avodah zarah, that's going to be like Reb Yehuda, who says that speech alone is not enough, and the Mishnah that says that if you simply say let's go and do avodah zarah, then you're chayiv, that would be like Reb Meir, who says that speech alone is enough. Other Omer of Yosef, but Rav Yosef then said, Lav milsahi da Amri. Wait, I take that back. This is this machlokes is not going to resolve the two mishnayos. The afilu l'Rab Yehuda b'dibur nami chiyuv v'mechayiv, because even Rabbi Yehuda would say that if a person says I'm going to do avodah zarah, he would be chayiv. The Tanya, as we learned by Rabbi Yehuda, Mrs. Rabbi Yehuda, la'olam eino chayiv ad sheyomar evod, that a person is going to be chayiv if he says that I am going to worship a getchke. Eilich v'avod, I will go and I will worship a getchke. Neilich v'navod, let us go and let's worship a getchke. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda generally would say that I'm going to do avodah zarah would be enough to be chayiv. But my kamifike, what's the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda then? It's b'meises le'atzmo. Ve'amr le'in kamifike. Specifically when a person is trying to market himself as the best avodah zarah there ever was, and he says, hey, sir, would you like to worship me? It'll be the best decision you've ever made. And he says, yes, I'd like to worship you. So Mar Sovar Mesis Le'atzmoi Shami Lei. So Reb Meir says, look, when a effective salesman like this goes and finds a target and says, hey, would you like to worship me? I'm the best avodah zarah you've never heard of. And he says, yes. I was hoping that somebody would stop me with such a promise. And when they say yes, they mean it wholeheartedly. So Reb Meir says, therefore you're chayiv. Or my sofer, whereas Reb Yehuda says, look, mesis la'atzmoi loy shamilei. Look, a person comes up and says, hey, are you interested in the new best avodah zarah? So lo shamile, they're not interested. Meimer Amri, they say, Maishna iu minon didon. I understand what makes you any better position to be an avodah zarah than I am. The indika Amri, when they say yes, I'm interested, achuchi ale. They're just laughing at him. A guy shows up and he says, I'm the best avodah zarah you've never heard of. And the guy says, what gives? What makes you so special? Why am I not the best avodah zarah you never heard of? And therefore, when the target says, yes, I'm interested, he's kidding. He's saying, yeah, right, I'm interested. Umasnisin, and therefore, how do you resolve the two mishnayos? Our mishnah that says that you have to serve, you have to worship the getchke. And the other mishnah that says that saying that you're going to serve a getchke is enough. So kan biyochid anises. So the other Mishnah is talking about a yochid anises, an individual who is targeted. Kan birab manisasim, whereas our Mishnah says that they actually have to worship in order to be chayiv, is when it is many people who have been targeted. Yochid loy mimlach v'toi basrei. An individual is not going to have a change of heart, and therefore he's going to make this mistake, and he's going to worship avodah zarah, and therefore simply saying that he's going to do avodah zarah is enough, is mechayiv. Now, this is not, by the way, talking about when a person is marketing himself as the get. It could just be a situation of mesis, right? Meaning, when the Mishnah and Daf Samach Zayin says that a person says, "I'm going to do avodah zarah," it means that a person comes and says, "Hey, why don't you come and do avodah zarah? Avodah zarah is the best," and he says yes, and he's targeted individually. So then he's going to be chayiv by simply saying, "Yes, I'm going to go ahead with it." Whereas Rabbi Mimlechev lo toy basri. However, our Mishnah, it says that the only chayiv when they actually worshipped avodah zarah. That's talking about when many people are targeted, such as in Ir Nidachas, and they say, "Yes, we're going to go do avodah zarah." That is not enough, because since there are a lot of them, there's more of an opportunity for a change of heart, and only once they actually worship the avodah zarah would they be chayiv. Amr of Yosef and Aminallah, and says of Yosef, how do I know that there is this distinction between individuals and many people? The Chsiv, as the Pasuk says, "Lo soy veloy v'lo sishma elav." It says by an individual who convinces somebody else to do avodah zarah. Shimon says to Reuven, "Why don't you come do avodah zarah? It's the best. It's going to change your life for the better." So it says there, "Lo so ve'lo v'lo sishma elav." That Reuven, I think he was the target. Reuven should not listen. Ha'ava v'shama chayiv. But right, the pasuk says, "Don't listen." But if he did agree and listen, right, so then that alone is enough because he was targeted individually. Eisvei Abaye. However, Abaye asks a kasha on his Rebbe, on Rav Yosef. Mishayni ben nises d'Rab nises d'Yochid. Is there really such a distinction between many people who are convinced to do avodah zarah and an individual? But we learn in a brayso, "Kisischo achicho ben imecho," that when your brother, the son of your mother, what's the word? Seduces? I don't think it's like seduces. When he when he convinces you, I guess, to do avodah zarah. Echad yochid anises ve'echad rabim hanisasim. Whether we're talking about an individual who is convinced or many people who are convinced. What's the word when you negatively convinced somebody? You are ensnared. Maybe you could say ensnared. Whether it's an individual who is ensnared or many people are ensnared, it's both the same, right? So again, echad yochid, and he says whether it's an individual who's ensnared, echad rabim and nisasim, whether it's many people who are ensnared. Now, of course, we know that the Torah makes distinctions between individuals who are ensnared versus an entire city that's ensnared, right? There's a difference between Yachid ha'oved avodah zarah and an Ir hanidachas. Yachid michlal rabim lahachmi al guf v'lakal al mamonu. When we make a distinction between an individual and a whole city, that's to say, right, lahachmi al gufo, that his punishment is more stringent. He gets skila rather than by Ir nidachas. It's only sayiv. V'lahakal al mamono, but we are lenient on his property. I.e., we only kill him, but we leave his property alone. Rabbi Michlal Yochid, and the difference by many, by Ir nidachas, is lahakal al gufam. They were more lenient when it comes to their bodies, that they're killed b'sayif rather than b'skila. Ulachmir al mamonam, but we also destroy their property. We are more stringent with regard to their property. In that way, that is the distinction between individuals and entire cities, or majorities of cities. That by an individual it's skila, but the money remains intact, and by cities it is saif and the money is destroyed. But with respect to all other aspects, they are the same, and therefore to say that our Mishnah is talking about Rabim and the other Mishnah is talking about Yochid, and that's why there's a distinction between saying versus doing. That is not the case. El Omer Abai, rather says Abai, kan benises mipi atzmo, kan benises mipi acherim. Rather says Abai, the distinction is between whether he decides on his own volition to serve avodah zarah versus if he is convinced by others, by somebody else, to do avodah zarah. Mipi atzmo, mimlich. that if he convinced himself, he decided on his own, I'm going to do avodah zarah, he might change his mind. There's no external pressure, and therefore he's only going to be chayiv once he actually serves the getchke. But if he's convinced by somebody else, well, then we assume that once he sort of agrees that he's going to go for it, he's going to go for it since he was convinced by somebody else, and he'll be chayiv by simply agreeing. Amar Abaye says, Abaye mino amino lo. How do I know this? The Chsiv, the pasuk says, lo sova v'lo sishma elav. Don't, right, that when it comes to mesis, when somebody else ensnares a person to do avodah zarah, so the pasuk says, don't agree, don't listen. Ha'ava v'shama chayiv, but simply by listening, by agreeing, you would be already chayiv for that, since you are ensnared by somebody else. Rava Amar says, Rava says, no, both Mishnayos are talking about where somebody else ensnares an individual. The Amarle kach ocheles kach shosa kach metiva kach maria hadlo Amarle kach ocheles kach shosa v'chule. Says Rava that both Mishnayos are talking about when an individual is ensnared by another person. The distinction is about how, in how much detail did the mesis, what level of detail did the mesis provide for the nises, for the target? So if he went into detail, right, he says, Kach ocheles, this is what the getchke eats. Kach shosa, this is what the getchke drinks. Kach metiva, this is the good that the getchke does. Kach maria, this is the bad that the getchke does, I guess, if you insult it. So in that case, so then the target is more invested, he understands more, so he's more likely to actually serve the getchke, and therefore he's going to be chayiv misa just for agreeing. But if the mesis didn't give such information, well then the target doesn't really have enough, or isn't convinced enough to really agree, and therefore he would have to actually serve the getchke in order to be chayiv. Amarav mino aminala says, over, how do I know this? The Chsiv, the pasuk says, Meiloye yo'amim asher svivosechem, that the pasuk says, from the gods of the nations that are surround you, hakrov eilecha v'gomer, right, those that are close to you, and those that are far away from you. Mali kroivim, mali rechokim. What is it? What difference does it make if they are, I guess, if the getchkes are close or if they're far? What's the difference? It's still avodah zarah. Hachi kamarle. This is what it's saying. Mitivusan shel kov matalomid, mativusan shel rechokim. That basically, from looking around at the getchkes around you, you can understand the getchkes that are far away from you. Meaning, my lab, what does it mean? The amarle must be talking about where the mesis says, the pasuk is talking about where the mesis says, kach ocheles, kach shosa, kach metiva, kach maria, shmamina. That the pasuk is talking about where the mesis says, look, I want you to come worship this getchke, it's the best thing ever. This is what it does this, it does that, it does the other thing. And the pasuk is saying, well, you should go and look at the getchkes that are around you and see, are these true? Do the getchkes around you, do they do this, that, and the other thing? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't believe this promise either. Okay, this argument either. Basically, what the pasuk is talking about is a scenario where the mesis is saying, kach, what we say, kach ocheles, kach shosa, etc., etc., etc. So the whole sugya of mesis, where we say lo sovev, lo sishma elav, and if you listen, you're already chai. That's talking about when he's giving more detail. But if he doesn't give as much detail, then you'd only be chai if you actually served the avodah zarah. Rav Ashi Omer says, Rav Ashi sheifa b'yisrael mumer, that the second Mishnah, when it says that even simply saying that he's going to do avodah zarah is enough, that's by a yid who is a mumer, he's already a shtikl nudnik. So when he simply says, I'm going to do avodah zarah, he's chayiv for that already. Ravina Omer, lozo avzo katani. Ravina says that the two Mishnayos are actually one sort of long kind of thing, meaning not only this, but even that. Meaning the first Mishnah says that you're chayiv if you serve the getchke, but not only that, you're even going to be chayiv, says the next Mishnah, if you simply say that you're going to serve a getchke. So they're not contradicting, they're sort of complementing one another. So now we get to a new kind of sugya, which is going to be like slightly tricky, not ideal thing I would say to end with, but all right, but whatever. I'm flying the whole day tomorrow, and better to just kind of get this out of the way now. Okay. Itmar was stated that Oivid Avodas Kechavim Me'ahavo Me'ira. Somebody who serves Avodah Zarah, not because he believes in the Avodah Zarah, but out of love for somebody or out of fear of a person, he says, "What the heck, fine," and he bows down to the Avodah Zarah. So Abaye Omer Chayiv. Abaye says it's Chayiv. Rav Omer Potter. Rav says it's Potter. Abaye Omer Chayiv. Abaye says Chayiv to Apolcho, because at the end of the day he worshipped the Getchke. Rav Omer says Rav Potter. Yikib the Olabe Aloya in. Ilolo. Rav says, look, at the end of the day, in order to be chayiv, you have to accept it as your God. And so long as you don't accept it as your God, so you're not going to be chayiv. It's a lot of negatives. In order to be chayiv, you have to accept it as your God. Okay. Fine. Simon Eved Yishtachel Mashiach. So Omar Abai says, Abai Mino Aminola. How do you know that you'll be chayiv from your Avamir? The Tanan that the Mishnah says, Ha'oved avodas kochavim echad ha'oved v'chule. Right. So the Mishnah had said that's somebody who worships avodah zarah, and then we said echad ha'oved ve'echad mekatev v'mezabech, etc. So what's oved? Oved is like a generic kind of thing. So it says Abaye, my love, echad ha'oved me'ahava u'miyira. That oved must be referring to whether it's ahava u'miyira, and we're saying that he's chayiv for that. Rava Omar lach. Whereas Rava would say, it's like Rabbi Yomi explained, that Ovid is referring to Kedarka, and then Mizabeach, Mekatev, Menasech, Mishtachim is talking about Shalom, Kedarka. V'Omer Abai says, Abai Mino Aminallah, how do I know that you're going to be chayiv from Me'avamir? The Tanya is learning the Brayso says, Shtachim Elohim, don't bow down to the Avodah Zarah. Don't bow down to them. You can bow down to another person. Okay, I guess maybe it's like a king or somebody that you have to show respect to. Is it possible that even if he is served like avodah zarah, like Haman, or served like Haman, no, don't worship them. Never. Now Haman was out of fear, and we're still right. Of course, Haman says you got to bow down, so you bow down. It's out of fear, and still we're saying don't do it. So it sounds like you'd be chayiv out of fear. Rav Amar kihamin below kamin. Rav says, well, like Haman in some ways, but also not like Haman. Kihamin diu gufi avodas kechavim. Well, it's like Haman in that don't serve Haman because he himself made himself into avodah zarah. Below kamin, but we're also the analogy to Haman is also incomplete because the ilu Haman miyira. Because by Haman, it was out of fear, but over here, we're not saying that you're chayiv because of fear. We're saying you're chayiv because he made himself avodah zarah, but we're not saying that he's chayiv because of fear. That yira alone would not be also according to Rava, because you would actually have to accept him as a god, which is not the case by Haman. Which is not the case if you do it out of fear alone. V'Omer Abai, says Abai, Mino Amina Lo, how do I know that you're chayiv mi'av miyir? The Tanya is willing to buy a Koyin Mashiach. This gets a little, this is like a thing. Koyin Mashiach ba'avodas koichavim. Okay, here's the thing. There's a concept of Koyin Mashiach that, okay, normally if a person is Machal Shabbos or something, B'shogeg, right? So he knows that it's Shabbos, but he doesn't realize that this particular malacha is asur, or he knows that this malacha is asur, but he doesn't realize that it's Shabbos, right? Normally, like a shigigas maisa thing, a person makes a mistake. He knows that on Shabbos you're not supposed to do malacha, but he makes a mistake. He doesn't realize that's malacha. He doesn't realize it's Shabbos, whatever it is. So bring a korban chatas, and that's either I think it's either a kispa or a seira, right? Once again. Yeah, I believe that it's either a kisba, or a seira, either a female sheep or a female goat. Okay, so you bring a korban chatas by shigigas maisa. You made a mistake. You know that it's not allowed, but you made a mistake somehow, and you bring either a kisba or a seira. Now, a kohen mashiach, however, the kohen gadol, however, is different. When he brings a korban, it is more like for example, like a par elam davar shel tzibur, which we're going to learn more, a little bit more now, but I think mostly in Horius, which we'll learn later this year. So in order for that to be chayiv, let's just say for now, it means that kilu. So what's a par elam davar shel tzibur? Par elam davar shel tzibur is when Bezdin rules, for example, that chaylev is mutter. Kilu. It's not that you made a mistake where it says, oh, this thing, oh, we thought it was chaylev, we thought it was shumon, so we said you could eat it, but really it was chaylev. Kilu. It's not that we know that chaylev is also, we made a mistake. Kilu, is this chaylev? Is it not chaylev? We made a mistake, so being a korban chatas. No. Par elam davar shel tzibur is if Bezdin ruled that chaylev, kilu, the whole sugya of chaylev is actually mutter. Kilu, they messed up by a whole category, by a whole mitzvah. The way the Bezdin says chaylev isn't an issue. And then it says, wait, chaylev is an issue, so you have to bring a korban. So a kohen Mashiach, a kohen gadol, also would only bring a korban when, right, for that level of a mistake, that kilu, the whole thing doesn't exist. Not like a technical thing, like, oh yeah, I know I'm not allowed to do malacha on Shabbos. I didn't realize that's a malacha. If I would have known it's malacha, I wouldn't have done it. Kilu. No, it's when he makes a mistake by like a whole category. So now, when it comes to avodah zarah, however, and the kohen gadol then brings a cow, right? He brings a cow. So now, right, rather than a kisbor or a seer. So now, and v'omer Abai says, Abai b'no amina la harun la yichayv from avim b'yir. The Tana's learned by a kohen Mashiach ba'avodas kacham. So a kohen gadol, when it comes to avodah zarah, Rabbi Omer b'shikigos ma'ases. So Rabbi says that while normally when it comes to other averis, he would only be chayav to bring a korban if mamish she like makes a mistake by the whole category of avera. But here by avodah zarah, Rebbe says b'shigagas ma'aseh. The kasha is going to be what does shigagas ma'aseh means, but basically he knows that avodah zarah is also, but he makes some kind of technical mistake. But the chacham say no, just like by other mitzvahs, behelim dover. He would only be chayiv like he, I guess, doesn't know that avodah zarah is wrong or something like that. V'shavin shebeseira kiyachid. But both Rebbe and the Chacham agree that by avodah zarah, if he does need to bring a korban, it is not going to be a cow. It's going to be a seira. It's going to be a female goat, just like a yachid, just like any other person would. V'shavin she'ein maybe asham talui. They both agree. Rebbe and the Chacham agree that a kohen gadol would never bring an asham talui for technical reasons, because whatever, fine. Hi, shigagas maise avodas kacham mechidami, and how is this shigagas maise when it comes to avodah zarah? He knows about avodah zarah, but he doesn't know about some technical detail. Right? And Rebbe says that it would be chayav to bring a seira in that case. Echidami ikasaver beis haknesesu. Well, if the kohen gadol thought that it was a shul, vishtach v'lo, bowed down to the shul, well, really b'la shamayim. Well, then his intention was to Hashem, not to avodah zarah. Rather, he sees the image of the king and he bows down to the image of the king. Well, if he accepted the king as a god, well, then he's mazid. He doesn't bring a korban. He did it on purpose. It's chayiv misa. But if he did not accept it as a god, lo klumu. Well, then he didn't do anything wrong. So elo lav me'ahav me'ira. Rather, it must be that it's me'ahava u'me'ira, and Abai is arguing that it's me'ahava u'me'ira, and we're saying that he's bringing a korban for it, so we see that he's chayiv. Whereas Rava will respond, lo, no, but omer mutter. No, it's talking about where he says that it's mamish mutter. But omer mutter, I knew helam dover. But if it's omer mutter, if he's saying that avodah zarah is mutter, well then isn't that helam dover? In which case, you should have to bring of course you would have to bring a korban. So, but Omer, mutter legamre. So, well, we're talking about when he says mutter, we're talking about when he says mutter legamre, helim dover, kiu miktsas uvitul miktsas. No, helim dover would be, kilu, not that it's like entirely. Right? What was that say? Kigon, yesh avodas kuchavim, for example, helam davar would be if we say, okay, there is avodah zarah in the Torah, but avodah zarah is only, mizabech, mekater, menasech, but mishtachave is mutter. One aspect of the avera we're saying is mutter, right? That would be helam davar. But here we're saying that it doesn't exist at all, and we're saying that in that case that would be a shigigas that would be a shigigas maise, and according to Rava, that would be where the Kohen Gadol would have to bring a korban. Interesting. Okay. Okay, fine. And that isn't Helam Dar, because Helam Dar would be like an aspect of it, where here we're saying it's mamish permitted. Interesting. Well, Chaver, that was Daf Samach Aleph of Mesechta Sanhedrin. And yeah, we just kind of got into much more details about like where you're gonna be chayiv for avodah zarah and stuff. Yeah, there's gonna be some like these aren't like the most easy dafs, but all right, enjoy. Peace out.